Good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference of the General Affairs Council, the last one under the Hellenic Presidency. We will hear statements by Deputy Foreign Minister of Greece, Minister Kourkoulas, and then from the Vice President of the Commission, Mr. Šefčovič, and finally a statement by Commissioner Füle, and then we will be happy to take your questions. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me first of all apologize on behalf of Foreign Minister Mr. Evangelos Venizelos. He had to fly immediately to Brussels for the NATO meetings, so that's why he was not in a position to participate, and he asked me also to participate in this press conference. So since this is the final General Affairs Council of our presidency, of the Greek presidency of the Council, I would like first of all to thank all the media representatives who have worked so hard with us over the past 6 years, covering all developments of our presidency, and also for their, let's say, full and very often positive reporting. So I want to thank you all. Now, briefly, to outline the results of today's meeting. Of course, the main duty of the General Affairs Council today was to prepare the European Council that will convene in 2 days. And then perhaps, after very briefly presenting the main topics, we can have a discussion. I could answer all the commissioners and the Vice President to your questions. So we started with a discussion on enlargement and the stabilization and association process. The focus of our discussion was, of course, the question on whether to grant candidate country status to Albania. I remind to you that the European Council of December 2013 decided against granting this status, and instead decided that the matter would be revisited at the end of the Greek presidency. So I'm very happy to report to you that today we reached a decision in favor of granting the candidate status to Albania. This is, of course, a major turning point for Albania on its path to European integration, but it's also a decision of great significance for all the countries of the Western Balkans, for Southeastern Europe, for the European and Euro-Atlantic perspective of all countries of the region. This reinforces the credibility of the enlargement process overall. And of course, it reaffirms that the European Union wants to welcome all the people of the Western Balkans in our European family. Next, there was a thorough discussion on the draft conclusions for the European Council of this week, focusing inter alia on the concluding the European semester by endorsing the country-specific recommendations and by agreeing on the strategic guidelines prepared by the Presidency for legislative and operational planning for the coming years in the area of freedom, security and justice, putting special emphasis on dealing with illegal migration and defining in practical terms how solidarity among Member States should be applied, reviewing progress made on the climate and energy was also another important item. In view of the October European Council of this year that will take very important decisions on climate and energy. Also, emphasis was put on energy security, also in light of the recent developments in our eastern and southern neighborhood. So today also, apart from the discussion for the preparation of the European Council, we adopted, ministers adopted the EU maritime security strategy. Maritime policies in general, you might remember, were a top horizontal priority of the Hellenic presidency, and it is in this context that we work together with the European Commission, with the External Action Service and the Member States on creating for the first time this strategy on maritime security on the basis of the relevant communication of the Commission and the External Action Service. So it is the first time that the European Union is developing a holistic, cross-sectoral and cost-efficient strategy of this kind, which enlarges the maritime security to include, beyond defense and security, the potential the sea holds for growth and deployment, as well as energy and energy security issues. It is also a strategy that is based on the fundamental European values of the rule of law, human rights, freedom and democracy, when securing the maritime interests of the European Union and its member states against a number of risks and threats in the global maritime domain. The Italian presidency will now work on an action plan that will ensure timely and effectively implementation of this strategy. And finally, there is an exchange of views on the European Union's new strategy for the Adriatic and Ionian macro region, based on a presentation made by the European Commission. This initiative brings together Greece, Italy, Croatia, Slovenia from the European Union, and also Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Serbia. And the objective is to improve the attractiveness of the region, the competitiveness of the region, and the connectivity in order to support sustainable growth and job creation. I would like also to brief you that there was a working lunch with the President of the European Council, Mr. Van Rompuy. During this working lunch, there was an exchange of views on the conclusions of the European Council, but also on the strategic document that the President Van Rompuy will present to the heads of states and governments. There were a lot of interventions, as you can imagine, from different member states, and this document will be elaborated further from now till Thursday, Friday. We, from our side, as a Greek delegation, we also proposed to include in the part of the document that is dealing with foreign relations a wording concerning the Eastern neighborhood, in which we would reiterate our attachment to the basic values of territorial integrity and inviolability of the borders concerning all our East neighborhood partners, which is not, it's Ukraine, it's Georgia, it is Moldova, it is Azerbaijan, it's Belarus. But there are a lot of many other interventions and suggestions, but I'm not going to go now into details on that. And may I now ask, thanking the European Commission as an institution, but especially Vice President Šefčovič and Commissioner Füle, from all the support they have provided to the Greek presidency during the last months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. As you see, by the time of this press conference, the agenda for today's General Affairs Council was very, very loaded, because, as Dimitris said, it was the last General Affairs Council of the Presidency, and it was in the full preparation of the European Council session. So there was a lot of agenda items. I think most of them been very well covered by the Presidency. I would just highlight some of the points. The preparation of the June European Council. The first, in the discussion with the President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, he made it quite clear that we would proceed with a formal decision concerning the future President of the European Commission on the most probably Friday this week. At the same time, the leaders would have the opportunity to discuss the strategic priorities for the European Union in the times of change, which should evolve around the top priorities which came as a clear message from the citizens in the European Parliament elections, and which should be viewed as a programming document, programming discussions for the future work of the European institutions. What was very important for the Commission was that we also managed to get general endorsement of the country-specific recommendation. As you know, this should complete another European semester. I was very pleased to hear that from the point of view of member states, there was also underlining the fact that we are improving the quality, we are improving the intensity of the interaction between the Commission and the member states on the country-specific recommendation. We can also state that in most of them we recorded at least some progress. The biggest one was in the fiscal consolidations, where we clearly see that the state deficits of the member states are going steadily down. I think that the items which have been referred to by Mr. Kurkulas concerning EU maritime security strategy, but also EU strategy for Adriatic and Ionian region, wouldn't be adopted today without the great work of the Greek presidency, which put it clearly as a priorities. And I also would like to appreciate the excellent cooperation we had with the presidency on these issues. And I would just conclude on underlying the fact that I remember very well when we started the Greek presidency in Athens, where the Prime Minister Samaras and Deputy Prime Minister Venizelos been describing the Greek presidency as a milestone, as a clear comeback of Greece into the heart of European cooperation. And I think that after the 6 months we can all say that it was a very successful presidency. Greece not only came back to the financial markets but also to structural surplus, and slowly is coming back to the economic growth. And we in the Commission are extremely thankful for how the Greek presidency used every minute before the European Parliament elections to work and complete extremely important and difficult files like banking union, like financial regulation rule book for our banking sector, or other very important issues like different aspects on enlargement, on which Stefan would speak in a minute. So from the Commission, I thanked very much to the Greek presidency for the effort, for the extremely efficient use of time, because you know that European elections cut a little bit off from the usual length of the European presidency semester, and I think that this was very much shared by all colleagues in the room. So thank you very much for excellent presidency. And now I think that the point you are all waiting for, how it was with the issue of enlargement and the discussion on Albania, I think that Stefan will be very happy to bring you the full picture.
Thank you, Maroš. I don't know what the full picture, but let me actually start where you have ended. And let me also, my own behalf and on behalf of my colleagues, to appreciate the excellent work with the Greek presidency. Until the last moment, it was today, also because of the Greek presidency, a great day for enlargement. It was definitely a great day for Albania's European Union integration. Albania is one step closer to the European Union. Another important milestone on the European Union path has been reached. And I really welcome the decision of the General Affairs Council to grant candidate status to Albania. I'm looking forward to these decisions to be endorsed by the heads of states and government of the European Council this Thursday on 26 June. Granting of candidate status is a logical consequence of Albania's reform efforts. Our report from the beginning of this month and today's decision of the ministers is acknowledgement of the European Union for the efforts made and the progress achieved on Albania's accession road. At the same time, it should be seen as an encouragement to continue with existing reforms and embarking on new reforms necessary to prepare Albania for the start of the accession negotiations later on. Let me just recall that over recent months, Albania has shown concrete action and continued political will to pursue the process of EU-related reforms. The Albanian government has continued to implement and consolidate reform measures in judicial reform and the fight against corruption and organized crime. The most recent example is a major police operation in Lazaret last week to destroy the cannabis cultivations in the area. For Albania to further advance on its EU integration path, major challenges still lie ahead. Albania will need to continue and consolidate its systematic approach to reforms, address existing shortcomings, and tackle also remaining EU-related challenges. To conclude, the granting of candidate status to Albania is a clear testimony that the enlargement process is credible and dynamic, and that the European Union sticks to its promises and commitments once the partners deliver on their reform homework. Thank you very much, and congratulate Albania.
I may just add to my appreciation and thanks to Stefan Füle and his team, just to remind to you that in the last 6 months during our presidency, we had the start of the negotiations of accession of Serbia, another historic moment for the whole region, the opening of 5 new chapters in our negotiations with Montenegro. 3 of them were opened this morning in the Intergovernmental Conference, in which we had the Vice Deputy Prime Minister of Montenegro and the Vice Deputy Prime Minister of Greece, Mr. Venizelos. And of course, there is progress also in the European path of Kosovo. So I think that all the omens for the enlargement, despite the economic and social crisis in Europe, are going very well, and at least we as a Greek presidency, we did our best, but with the help of our partners in the European Commission, but also in the Council, I think we have done a very good job in the enlargement package. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take your questions. If you can state your name and medium that you represent, please.
Harris Azuka, ABC News. A question for the Presidency and the Commission. We understand from the big member states that the opening of membership negotiations for Albania, it will take time. It will take time. More than for Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro, for sure. Hopefully not like Macedonia. But anyway, the question is, should Albania fulfill all the criteria that we see today in the Council conclusions to open the negotiations? Thank you very much.
Listen, you don't need a big member state to tell the obvious. I mean, it's just if you follow the progress report of the European Commission and what we are saying in a consistent way, you will see from the opinion we have provided to the member states and also to Albania on its applications to become the EU member states, that the task is huge. Now, let me recall that last year we have actually identified 12 big priorities, or at the end of 2012. And we have helped the authorities in Albania to address most of them, and then upon the success, we have been able already at the end of last year to recommend granting the candidate status. At the same time, we made it absolutely clear that the candidate status is not the opening of accession negotiations. It's appreciation of the reforms being done by both the previous government and the current government, and also incentives for the reforms to continue. Now we have the high-level dialogue on the 5 key priorities. We have clearly defined what needs to be done, and I'm actually very thankful for the member states today to underline some of those issues. What we need is a solid track record. It's a solid track record. We'll be working with the authorities and also other important stakeholders in Albania to address exactly those issues. So there will be no ambiguity concerning what really needs to be done for my successor to be able to come to the member states with a solid and credible proposal to open the accession negotiations.
If I may just add that by reminding you that in the treaty it is very clear that there is no decision of big or small member states about opening the negotiations. It is a unanimous decision of all member states upon a proposal of the European Commission. So the differentiation between big and small doesn't count at all when it comes to a unanimous decision of the member states to open negotiations. And of course we look forward. We know that the process has become more complex compared to previous negotiations, and depends how long ago you go. I mean, I remember very well the negotiations of my own country in the 80s, in the 70s, and then Spain and Portugal, in which I participated as a European Commission official. It is much more complex now, for the simple reason that now also the European Union has become a more complex organization with more competences, and with competences that a few years ago, like the euro or other policy areas, but the decision is taken by a unanimous vote of the member states. Thank you.
Arta Tozai, Top Channel Albania Television. First to the EU presidency. In the Council conclusions, there is no mentioning of the word negotiations. All the conditions are mentioned, are listed, but not the wording accession negotiations. I would like to know why, and as it was already mentioned in the last, in December Council. First. Secondly, is enlargement an EU priority in the upcoming 5 years? We know it won't be for the Italian presidency, but for the rest of the years. And here, Commissioner, do you expect Albania to be able to be in a position to start the negotiations during the next mandate of the Commission? Thank you.
Okay, on the question on the conclusions of the General Affairs Council, I'm trying to find out the exact. I mean, when we speak about granting the candidate status to a country, I think it is very clear that the next step can only be starting of accession negotiations. This is. Sorry. Yeah, because now we didn't. Yes, the conditions for the next step, and the next step can only be the starting of negotiations, but perhaps the Commissioner can clarify, but I can assure you there was no any political will to diminish the importance. I mean, we all know what it means, candidate. It doesn't mean starting of negotiations. It has some implications, not only political, but some practical as well. And now the time frame between candidate status and starting of negotiations depends on, mainly, if not exclusively, on the ability of the candidate country to fulfill the conditions which are clearly mentioned here. And I'm sure that at the level of the European Council, when the head of states and governments are going to adopt a kind of strategic program for the next 5 years, I'm sure that enlargement will be one of the priorities, and I'm sure that also during the Italian presidency and the next Commission, enlargement will be a priority. It has always been, I mean, in the last years, a very successful EU policy. Just look back in the last 2 years with the accession of Croatia. So I think that nobody can blame the European Union that we don't keep our word on the enlargement policy. On the contrary, I think from our side as European Union, we have fulfilled all the conditions and all the expectations that we have announced.
First of all, no game with the words here and there. I think what really is important that the December Council decisions stands. They sort of provided with a clear framework what are the next steps and what are sort of the key priorities which needs to be addressed before the issue of opening of accession negotiations could come on the table of the member states. And it was within that framework that the member states and the Commission have addressed the specific issue of the candidacy. So I would focus on the positive news. being agreed and done within the framework of still relevant December decision of the European Council. Number two, let me recall, or let me reconfirm the point that I'm trying to underline as a part of the news story of enlargement. And it is that there are two policies in the European Union which are interconnected from the very beginning of the European Union. And it is the deepening integration of the European Union and also enlargement. Getting deeper in integration and at the same time adding new members and strengthening the European Union through both policies is what's actually moving the European Union forward. Sometimes it is one policy influencing another, the other time it's exactly the opposite. But without those two policies being actively pursued at the same time, the European Union will hardly be able to move forward. And the third issue, whether Albania will be able to start accession negotiations during the next Commission. Listen, I can assure you that the capacity of the European Commission, the willingness of the European Commission to help Albania on its path is going to be there. So the only question is whether the political will and readiness on Albanian side to address those 5 key priorities is there. Because if it's going to be the case, then the answer to your question is positive.
One final question, please.
Vladimir Lame from Planet Television of Albania. The first question is for the Commissioner Füle. Today, after your Twitter that Albania joined or gained the candidate status, Albanian politicians were running to get merits. But who made this day to come for Albania, the candidate status? And I would like to know or to have a clear concrete evaluation on track record, on proactive investigation. What does it mean normally, clearly, this? And the question for the Commission is about the Greek minority in Albania. Do you think that for the Greek presidency, do you think that the rights of Greek minority in Albania are fully respected?
Listen, I made that point, but let me extend on that point. It's clear that we have been able to arrive to this date granting the candidate status based on the work of the previous government and also on the work accelerated by the current government. But let me extend that gratitude beyond just the authorities. Let me make a point that the enlargement is a very inclusive task which require other important stakeholders, including civil society, to take their part. And by the way, in all the previous this high-level dialogue on key priorities, I've never ignored to meet with the civil society representatives just to underline how important their work is. So this is not the achievement of the European Commission as such as institution or some individual commissioner. This is an achievement of all Albanians, and my gratitude to them. Now, as far as the investigation is concerned, when we had the discussion about those 2 priorities, the fight against corruption and against organized crime, the member states made a quite logical request. They said the strategies are good, the action plan are fine, the political will shown through various declarations excellent. But what we really need is to see the concrete number of investigations being opened. What we really need to see the court proceeding as a next steps. And what we really need to see that if someone is found guilty on those issues, that he is going to pay for his crime, you know, in the prison. To see the concrete figures, the concrete results on the ground, to see beyond the political declarations, that's what we meant. The track record in this, but also in other fields.
Okay. As you know, I'm here in my capacity as representing the presidency of the Council of the European Union, and I think that in this very important historic day for Albania, but also for Albanian-European and Albanian-Greek relations, I would not like to express myself as just a minister of Greece, but as a European minister. But I will not avoid your question. As you know, protection of minority and minority rights is one of the basic principles of the European Union and one of the basic conditions of the political criteria for the Copenhagen. Greece and Albania are not the only examples of issues of minorities. We have, I mean, Europe has a long tradition in this respect, and I would say that the accession process and the enlargement process has been extremely positive in overcoming some of the more acute minority issues in our European continent. I remember myself as a EU Commission official that I was involved in many initiatives in the 90s in Central and Eastern Europe on minority, the famous Balladur initiative. So what I want to say by this is that I'm not in a position to tell you, and I think nobody will tell you that everything is perfect. There are problems, there are issues. These issues are discussed because there is a very, I mean, Albania is a friendly country of Greece, and Greece has supported efficiently and full-heartedly the European perspective of Albania. And I think that we are going now to a new strategic period of Albanian-Greek relations, where we're going to be partners, not just friends. And the level of integration, if you wish, when both countries are in the European Union is such that I'm sure that all the remaining issues, and there are, will be solved, and in a few years' time it will be just a memory of history, all these problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Hard with us over the past 6 years, covering all developments of our presidency, council that will convene in 2 days, and then have a discussion. I could answer all the commissioners and the vice president to your question. Albania, I remind to you that the European Council decision in favor of granting the candidate status to Albania. This, of course, a major turning point for Albania and Euro-Atlantic perspective of all countries of the region. Wants to welcome all the people of the Western Balkans in our strategic guidelines prepared by the presidency for legislative and operation in the area of freedom, security and justice, putting special emphasis on dealing with you of the October European Council of this year that will take very important. So today also, apart from maritime policies in general, you might remember, were a top horizontal priority of the Hellenic. And it is in this context that we work together with the European Commission, with the External Action Service. So it is the first time that the European Union is developing a holistic, cross-sectoral issues. It is also a strategy that is based on a fundamental Europe. The Italian presidency will now work on an action plan. There were a lot of interventions, as you can imagine, from different member states, with, this in the part of the document that is dealing with foreign relations, integrity, and inviolability of the borders, concerning all our east